Welcome to Ion Franchising, where you will learn the A to Z's of
everyone, and welcome back to another fabulous episode of Ion Franchising. Of course, I'm your host, Lance Graulich. Today, I got a buddy of mine who's a superstar in franchising. He doesn't look that old, but boy, he's done a ton of stuff. He's awarded like 220 franchises for just one brand last I checked. He'll tell me if the math is correct or not. So anyway, he hails from Nashville, Tennessee. He's a triathlete. He's got a young daughter, amazing wife, and a son, soon to be another daughter, actually. So there you have it. And I'm going to tell you his name right now. But let's see. Do I owe anything? Let me do this also. Belfor Franchise Group is the company he did work for, and 12 brands, 4,700 locations, and 57 countries. Welcome to the show, my buddy Aaron Harper.
Thanks, Lance. Super excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me on the show. I'm excited to talk about franchising with you today.
Well, awesome, Aaron. Thank you so much for being here. So let's start off with the distant past. When Aaron Harper was young, what did Aaron Harper want to be when he grew up?
All right, perfect. I can do that. Grew up in Southern California, went to school UC Santa Barbara, studied film, thought I wanted to be a film and television agent. Went to Hollywood afterwards, worked in the mailroom, worked my way up, was kind of on the agent trainee track, working for crazy people in Hollywood. Every story you've heard about Hollywood, that's exactly how it is. If you've seen Entourage, I was Lloyd, Yep.
I know the guy that created Entourage.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was me for about 5 years. Yep. Kind of realized I wanted something more out of life. It's a grind out there, but I did learn a lot on how to kind of develop relationships, manage really intense personalities, and kind of navigate my way through a very relationship focused industry. I had a friend who worked in franchising in Tennessee, and kind of reached out to him, connected with him, hadn't talked to him for a while. And he's like, man, you need to get into franchise development. And I'm like, what's franchise development?
What the heck is that?
What does that even mean? I'm like, I know about McDonald's. Is that what you're talking about? And he's like, no, it's this really cool, you get to kind of walk potential entrepreneurs through like a systemized approach, and then they change their lives. And I was like, that sounds awesome. So he made the mistake of giving me his boss's email address. There was not a position available at the company that he worked at. So I emailed his boss every 3 weeks for about 6 months until he hired me. So seven emails in and no response. I see that one of the development directors from his company went to go work at another company. And I kind of called him and I was like, get me an interview. And he's like, well, they really want someone with franchising experience. And I'm like, what do they pay you to do at that place? And he's like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, what do they pay you to do? And he's like, well, I'm like, they pay you to close deals. So get me a damn interview.
Yep.
And so anyways, he called me the next day. I drove down, I had the interview, and about 3 months later, I was actually hired, and I worked at a company called Chem-Dry, doing development for a brand that's been around a long time, carpet cleaning company, biggest carpet cleaning company in the world. And then kind of merged with Belfor over the course of about 3.5 years with Chem-Dry, awarded over 135 franchise locations with just me, and then I hired someone else.
So let's talk about that. So let's talk
Sure.
about that process. So you got a lot of good stuff here. So let's talk about that process, because a lot of people listening to the show, of course, are interested in business opportunities. Some people don't know anything about franchising. So when you use the terminology award, and you might want to back it up a couple of steps.
Sure.
What did you like about franchising? Like you said, a lot of people, they hear franchising, the first thing most people think of is McDonald's.
McDonald's.
and
Yep,
and not everybody can afford to be a McDonald's franchisee. So you're like, wait, what? There's all these other franchises out there. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So what I learned is basically there's this whole kind of like home service, mobile, franchising world where you can basically get into a business for like 200 grand or less in a lot of cases. And
financing available.
And financing available. With the brand I worked on, there was internal financing. Both brands that I worked on at Belfor were internal financing options available, but really reasonable costs to get in. And I didn't know that existed. Franchising was always this thing in my mind of like, you need $1.2 million for, McDonald's or this or that. And when I really started digging into it and doing the research, I saw that there's all these franchise opportunities that you can get in at a reasonable cost, whether it's with an SBA loan or a home equity line of credit or 401k rollover. And people can kind of get a return on their investment relatively quickly. And so it opened up this whole new world for me. And the minute that I got into franchising and saw what it was about and started kind of getting franchisees into the brand that I was working on, I absolutely did not want to ever leave. Like, I talked about this with a buddy of mine the other day. I'm like, I'm never going to be able to do anything else. What am I going to be able to do? I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm going to be in franchising for the rest of my life. There's nothing else I would want to do.
You get sucked into that franchise family.
You absolutely do. And what's wild is I don't ever meet someone who graduates college and they're like, I'm going for a career in franchising. Unless their dad's been in franchising or mom's been in franchising for 20 years, everyone seems to just fall into it, which makes it really interesting, right? Because the people you talk to, no one planned to be there. And so that's why I think we're such a tight-knit community of people. And we're all here to help entrepreneurs and help other people be successful, right? So that whole energy is just something I'm very attracted to and frankly addicted to at this point. I'm never going to do anything else.
I love it. So when an average person at Chem-Dry, and obviously, like you said, Belfor bought Chem-Dry, and then you got involved with the Patch Boys, which we're going to talk about. Let's just get right into it, because I asked the question. The process of awarding a franchise, right? What would you do? What was your most recent process, and how did it work? Because some people are like, did they slide my credit card and pre-authorize me on the first phone call? No. It's like a coffee date on the first call is what I say.
Literally, we're getting to know each other and making sure that we can talk to each other is literally what it is. So my process is I'm trying to basically understand if what my company is offering, with the brand that they're offering, is if you're going to make sense for that brand, right? Because it makes no sense for someone to just award a franchise to someone who's not going to be successful in it, right? So the things that I'm looking for, that it's contingent upon what the business model is of that brand, right? There are some opportunities that are absentee or semi-absentee. There are some opportunities. So my brand specifically was, you're going to manage the team, but you are going to run the business full time, but you're not going to be out there doing the labor. That was for the most recent brand that I worked on.
Right.
So it's a multi-step process to make sure that we're going to be a good fit for each other, because we're getting into a marriage for 5 or 10 years or longer, depending on renewals and everything like that. And we need to make sure that through the ups and downs of a marriage, we're going to work together on getting through that. Right. So a lot of that's about culture and the community and everything that we provide, but it's a multi-step process. If someone's gets on a first call and they're like, sell me on your brand, I'm like, hold on. I need to make sure that you're right for our brand, right? I'm not going to just sell you on my brand, because frankly, I don't know that you're going to be good for our brand. Right. So ultimately,
and by the way, isn't that funny? Because there are still so many people today that truly believe, I'll decide if I'm going to join that brand or not. Well, that's not how it works. It is truly a two-way street. And there are plenty of people that are kicked out of the process that are not allowed to join the brand because of one reason or another, but mainly because you're not a good fit, because they don't want the headache. You don't want
we can talk a little bit about that, but I was with the franchises that I was awarding, I was turning away pretty much an equal amount every month because they weren't the right fit, right? So, and I mean, for us, for the brand that I was working on, we award a very large territory, right? So some franchises will say, you get 200,000 people, you know, call me in a year and maybe you'll be all right. We were awarding franchises so rapidly that it's like, no, we're going to be selective about who comes in, but we're going to give you between, let's just say 600,000 and 900,000 people, right? So you're going to get a big chunk of land, and we're going to expect you to grow into it, right? Maybe not immediately, but we're going to expect you to scale your business, right? So there's only so much space on a map that you can award. Yeah. So when you're moving at the rate that we moved, and I've done a lot of work with FranServe, which I know you're active member in, and pretty much all the work I've done is with FranServe, frankly. And I'll be the first to tell a consultant, this person's not right for our brand, but I'll tell that consultant that early on in the process so that they could say, okay, there might be something that's better for them. Whereas a lot of franchisors, I think, wait till that very end, and now we've gotten ourselves into it. And so I don't do that. I know within 5 minutes or less if that person's going to be right for the brand I'm working on.
Yeah, great. And then as you proceed, I know the conversations get more serious. Eventually you give them, I mean, maybe after the first or second phone call, you give them the franchise disclosure document.
Yep, exactly. And that process is set in stone that I do with every candidate. And it's about, in my opinion, it's about transparency. So before I send this document out, we're going to actually hop on a screen share together. And I'm going to walk you through the main points here so that you know what your expectations are. And we also know what our expectations of you are and what your expectations. And so we go through it, then I send it out.
Got it.
And that's very important, because with the old brand, with another brand I've worked on in the past, their recommendation was just send it out, get it signed, and move on. But it's a pretty scary document. I mean, it's like a landlord document or a mortgage document, right?
It's like a mortgage. I always describe it like a mortgage. Have you ever read your mortgage? No.
Right.
Well, you need to look at this.
Exactly. And when you're signing at the end on closing day with the mortgage, they're just like, sign here, sign here, sign here. And it's like, so what I do is say, hey, before we even get to the signing section, we're going to review this and make sure you understand every single item. And if you have any questions about the document, I'm going to answer them for you right now, because I've read this thing 25, 30 times.
Right.
So
I love it. So with the Patch Boys, there was a good item 19 that was in there, the earnings claim.
So when we bought the brand, there was no item 19
in the beginning, but keep going.
Then we built it. Yes.
Yeah.
Then we built it when we got it, because we interviewed franchisees, we collected the data. But ultimately, when we bought the brand, we added a lot to it. Like from an infrastructure standpoint, We built a management team that was considerably larger than what it had before. And there was a lot more infrastructure. So what I did is I had franchisees talk to, hey, here are some franchisees who came in before Belfor, and here are also some franchisees who have come in since Belfor, who are a month or 3 months into their business. Go talk to them and see about their experience and what they've had. And for me, I maintain very good relationships with the franchisees that sign up because of this transparent, approach that I take. And so I'll call them up and be like, hey, I think this guy's a really good fit. You're super important. You're a super important part of the growth of this franchise. Like, we need more people like you. So it's super important that you talk to people so that we can kind of replicate you guys. Like, ultimately, that's what we need. And so I'll put someone into those conversations really early on in the process.
Yeah, I love that. And I tell people all the time, Aaron, people all the time ask, how do I know which is a good brand? And I said, well, you have the beauty of looking at the franchise disclosure document. The item 19 is the earnings claim within that, which tells you a lot of good information. And the best brands have a great validation process where you'll have a chance to talk to quite a few franchisees to essentially validate their experiences. So you are not going into this blindly at all. And in fact, it feels like you're joining a fraternity, sorority type thing where you're going to know whether you mesh with the culture and the people, and you're going to know they're making money and they're happy. What more do you need?
Exactly. And it's a big jump to leave your job that you've been in for 20 years, or, spend your 401k that you've been holding on to for a long time for a rainy day. But ultimately, like, the best way to control your destiny is to be a business owner. And so franchising gives you an opportunity to do that in a way that's less risky than just saying, oh, well, I'll go buy a truck and some equipment and go start my own business. It's like,
3 years later, you're still losing money.
Yeah. Or you're trying to get up to a certain number monthly. Whereas if you were to start a franchise, you might be at that number monthly within 3 to 6 months, because we've, as franchisors, vetted the suppliers. We make sure the marketing companies are going to produce. We're able to negotiate discounts with those suppliers because of volume. I mean, there's just so many advantages to franchising that you just cannot get on your own.
So after your whole entire process of the franchise disclosure document review and at some point, the validation, at some point there's a meet the team day or discovery day, and how does that normally work? And how does the, actual award process work?
So this is really important. So I work for the franchisor, right? So I am essentially the franchisor. Me and the president of the brand were the first full-time employees at Patch Boys Belfor, right? We were the ones. And so what happened was we went out and got to know all the franchisees. Hey, what can we help you with? How can we be supportive? If you were a new franchisee, what would you want? All of these things. And then we built systems around that. So essentially what happened is me and the president of the brand were talking multiple times a day. And so we continued that relationship. We built it throughout the whole time that I was at Belfor. So when training changed, I was able to reflect that in my communication. So operations and development were 100% aligned throughout the whole process. I mean, we had disagreements, obviously, but we were always working towards a common goal. If operations and development are not talking to each other, or there's an organization that's selling and then there's a franchisor that's supporting, what ends up happening is when things change, they go in different directions. And what hurts is the franchisees and the support that they get, because all of a sudden we're not saying the same thing and it becomes problematic, right?
Yep.
So with that relationship that we've established together, he had implicit trust in me to find someone and make sure they're 100% qualified. And I had implicit trust in the consultants that I worked with. Hey, here's what I'm looking for. And if you send me someone that's not right, I'm going to let you know early on, but here's what I'm looking for. And here are the types of qualities we're looking for in a franchisee. So at the end of the process, when we've reviewed the FDD, they've talked to franchisees, they've figured out their financing and everything like that, I would schedule kind of a virtual phone call. We called it our kind of final approval call.
Got it.
And it was with me and the president of the brand. But because we were so aligned and he knew I was turning away people in droves, it was a pretty seamless process.
Yeah.
And so I think it's super important for franchisors to make sure that development and operations continue to communicate through the life of the franchise. And it's for the franchisee's sake.
Absolutely. Because without successful franchisees, we have nothing.
We have nothing, literally nothing. Yeah.
So what do you do after that virtual discovery day? You call them and say, congratulations. We'd like to invite you to be a franchisee.
Exactly. We say, hey, we really liked you. They know at that point because, we've developed such a strong relationship with each other through that process. But it is, hey, we want you to join our family, and, and it's a big deal. And then we send them the agreement, and then they sign. And then about 8 weeks later, they're going to training.
And so here's thank you for going through that. So here's always one of my favorite questions, and it always is wonderful to hear these answers. So the Patch Boys, first of all, describe the Patch Boys just in a couple of lines. What is the Patch Boys?
So it's the biggest drywall repair franchise in the US. So it's small holes in walls, plumbers, electricians come out, whatever they have to fix or install. What's that?
They make a mess.
They make a mess. They leave it. They check out. They give you an invoice. Customers left with a problem. Kids, high school seniors, like there's just a lot of issues with drywall, and the big drywall companies don't want anything to do with it because they've got big crews and they want to hang multiple sheets. Yep. And so Patch Boys basically fills a niche that very few contractors, subcontractors, drywall installation companies will target, and they provide a service that's above and beyond anything that customer is going to get from a handyman who specializes in 100 things and isn't good at any of them, or maybe 2 of them, right? Like, so that's kind of the concept.
Now, here's where I'm going to insert a public service announcement for those listening that might want to do a franchise. And I tell people all the time, whether your net worth is 40,000 or 200 million, like a guy that I'm talking to now, or a family I'm talking to now, everybody starts to understand. You might not get it in the beginning, but they start to understand that a lot of franchise businesses that are successful are not sexy. It's not what you thought, but money is sexy to a lot of people, and it allows you a lot of freedom. So regarding the Patch Boys, now that I'm done with that, Aaron, now that I'm done with that, your typical franchisee at the Patch Boys is definitely not what the listeners would think, because
that's exactly right.
So share that.
So the franchisee we're looking for, or that we were, when I was there, that we were looking for, is the kind of person who's worked in a white collar profession for a long time, or managed other people's businesses. We had a lot of guys come from medical sales, cybersecurity, IT, just a lot of professions where they're frankly very high performing executives.
Probably have an attorney in the group. There's always one attorney.
Oh yeah, attorneys, CFOs. I mean, high level advertising executives. I mean, other business owners, and that's what we're looking for, really. If someone were to call me when I was working there and say, "Hey, Aaron, I'd like to patch holes in walls," not the business for you. We're going to give someone 600,000 or 900,000 people. We want you to scale and grow the business. We don't want you working in the business. We want you working on the business. And so, we're basically, Patch Boys make sure that there's a technician hired prior to going to training. We don't actually let people go to training unless they've got someone ready to work full time. They turn leads on while they're at training for franchisees. So they're answering calls and booking estimates live at training. And so it's a lot of people, like when you leave $150,000 a year salary to run a business full time, no one's going to do that if it takes them 5 years to replace their income, right? Like, we obviously don't make any guarantees or anything like that. We would never do that. But they're talking to other franchisees who are having success after leaving a career and doing this full time. And it then becomes very appealing. So that the rate in which people are joining the franchise system, or the one that I had worked, Patch Boys, was quite rapidly.
Yeah. What's so good about what you were saying, and it got me smiling. I had a guy not too long ago. He goes, "Well, why can't people make guarantees of the performance?" And I said, well, essentially, there are guarantees. You look in the item 19 and it says the average sales, depending on how it's disclosed, it could be sales, it could be profit margins. It could, it could be a lot of different things. So there's your guarantee that the average franchisee does what it says in that section. And then when you talk to franchisees through the validation process, you hear consistencies of what they're loving and what kind of money and how long it took them to ramp up. The issue is, and I tell people all the time, are you going to be average? We don't know.
Perfect.
We don't know.
I ask the same thing.
Yeah. And I can tell you, I've owned franchises and I've been above average. I'm always
Yeah.
going to be above average. It's just me.
Yep.
That's how I grew up. So I'm sure you have those same conversations.
Same exact conversations. And if someone wants a promise guarantee and there's a franchisor who's going to say, yeah, no matter what, I mean, first of all, that's illegal. And second of all, like, yeah, it's, hey, when you work at a job, are you typically average? Are you below average? Are you above average? Well, every job I've worked at, I've been the top performer. It's like, okay, well, we're giving you a framework. There's an operations manual that literally says exactly what you're supposed to do. If you follow it and follow the systems, like, you'll be fine, right? If you go against the grain and you do something that you're not supposed to do, that's when the FDD becomes scary, because it protects the people who are doing what they're supposed to be doing from the people who are acting, in a way that could hurt the brand or the other franchisees.
Exactly. So with the Patch Boys, you left the Patch Boys, but you sold how many franchises in the 2 years since Belfor acquired them?
223 franchise locations in 24 months.
Wow. And we know that's because you're amazing.
I appreciate the accolades, but it takes an army. If the product wasn't good and people weren't opening their doors and the support staff wasn't there and the franchisees weren't singing the praises of the support staff, we wouldn't be opening locations, right? So it takes every piece, right? And that's why franchising is so cool, because if every piece, marketing, operations, training, ongoing support, development, if they're all saying the same thing and working in harmony with one another, then the franchisee can know that he or she has a good business model and they're joining a real family and a culture of support, which I'm confident that saying we have that at the Patch Boys, or they have that at the Patch Boys.
Right, exactly. So I think I coined a phrase. The elephant in the room, so to speak, is I know you didn't gain any weight, is that there's a recession. Either we're in it or it's approaching. And there's a lot of people freaking out. And I know of people that have already lost their jobs. And I joke with people, but I have to tread lightly, of course, because this is really serious. There are livelihoods at stake. And I said, well, look, if you would like to explore franchise opportunities now, so you never have to deal with this again, I'm happy to help you. Obviously, as a franchise broker myself, I work for free, and I get paid by the brands some sort of commission and help people find their perfect business. So what I love, and I'm calling it recession depression. So franchising is amazing during recessionary periods because there are so many needed businesses. We got to see this. We got a glimpse of this through the pandemic, which we haven't experienced, but we have experienced recessions, and franchising does very well. So talk a little bit about your experiences and understanding, being an essential business.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's why I think Belfor and myself are so focused on home services. And like you said, these kind of dirty businesses like restoration or carpet cleaning or
just unsexy,
unsexy businesses. So, these are things that are going to happen regardless of what is going on in the economy, right? Like, you will always have plumbing leaks. It doesn't matter, who's in the White House or whatever, like, and you'll need to get that fixed, right? And so I'm really focused on those businesses that no matter what's going on in the economy, this is something that's going to happen no matter what. Yeah. And when you take a business that you step into, let's just say kind of this blue collar world, right? Where people don't respond, there's a bad reputation, let's be honest, in the blue collar space of low response times or bad customer service. And it's just really fragmented. It gives business owners and people who have never stepped into business ownership, but know how to treat people correctly. It gives them an opportunity to really stand out and really shine in their community. And oftentimes our franchisees have won the job just because they showed up on time, they had a wrapped vehicle, they had an iPad, they had a certain thing they said to customers. Like, everyone else who got called for that literally didn't answer or didn't call back or said they were going to show up at a time and they didn't. Yeah. And so when you take kind of this sophisticated approach to a traditionally blue collar industry, you really have an opportunity to, really kind of stand out and build a really successful business. And when you have the support of a franchise system that's going to tell you, hey, here's the steps you need to take to get there, and all you got to do is follow the instructions, to me, that's better than any job that you might get. Like, it's almost like these golden handcuffs. People say, well, when am I going to have health insurance again? It's like, health insurance is like $1,000-$1,200 a month for a family of 4 for like pretty good health insurance. Like, you know what I mean? So like, I mean, it depends on the market. I'm just saying.
And it's a write-off when you're a business owner.
Exactly. And so it's like I've awarded franchises to people that are 21 years old, and I've awarded franchises to people that are 70 years old, and everywhere in between. And the people who are in their like later years, they always tell me after 6, 12, 18 months into the business, God, I wish I did this 10, 20 years ago. And so whenever I talk to like a Gen Z or a millennial, and I'm like, hey, because I'm a millennial, I'm like, hey, like I talk to a lot of people. This is an opportunity to not do 20 years behind a desk, and
actually have something to show for it when you're done.
Have equity.
Yes.
Have ownership and equity. And that's what, I mean, you mentioned, real estate when we've talked before. It's like, yeah, the reason people buy into real estate is because they own it. And now they have an income producing asset that they're going to have, right? Like franchising is no different. You just have to maybe work a little bit harder than buying a property and keeping your job full time. But the amount that you're going to get back and the fulfillment and the enrichment that you're going to get back from doing that is going to be second to none.
100%. And that's a perfect explanation. Earlier in the conversation, I think we alluded to the fact that we're going to get back to, who is not right for a franchise. So in all your years doing this and building relationships and rejecting people, who's not right for a franchise?
So I'll tell you a couple stories. So
Please.
I talked to this gal, right? She called in and she had looked at a bunch of franchises, and she had even purchased a franchise that she bought. And, she does very well. I mean, high level advertising. Like I'm talking $300,000-$400,000 a year kind of salary. And she gets on the phone with me. Yeah, I really like your concept. I really like Belfor, but like I'm looking for something kind of passive, semi-passive, so I could build it up and, eventually replace my income. And I'm like, I'll just, for the sake of keeping anonymity, I'll just call her Krista. And Krista, I think you're great, but this isn't the right opportunity for you. We don't have, that's not our model. And this Krista was not used to being told no.
Well, what do you mean I'm not right for your brand?
I'm like, listen, I think you're great, but like we're looking for people who want to build the business full time and have the capacity to do that. And we make sure that our franchisees are busy with the right marketing companies and the right ad spend and the right, recruiting and all that stuff. But we need full-time effort. Yeah. She goes, well, my husband is, making $60,000, $65,000 a year, and he could leave potentially to run this full-time. Would that be okay? And I was like, I would love to talk with him. And if he's the right fit for us, if he's anything like you, absolutely, let's have that conversation. And so the next call, we brought both of them on and we kind of talked about the opportunity and what it's going to take to be successful in it. And they were both like 100% in. But you have to know what's required for your brand to be successful. Another example, and I get this all the time, and I think there's a lot, and maybe this because there's a lot of opportunities that are moving towards this. And can I just keep my job and hire a manager full time? And my answer to that is no one cares about this opportunity more than you. Yes. A manager you pay maybe $60,000, $65,000 a year, even $80,000 a year. What if he gets a better job? He goes and gets a 6-figure job managing this construction site, and he leaves you and you don't know how to run the business, and you only have maybe 10 hours a week to allocate towards the franchise. Unless you have serious capital set aside And the franchisor themselves are picking up a lot of that slack with maybe call centers or recruiting or other things, maybe, different things that the franchisor provides. This is your business. You're going to invest $200,000+ of your money. You need to make sure that it's being managed properly, right? And so our model wasn't that. There are a ton of models out there that do provide that ability, and maybe a manager could help and grow the business. But for us, it was too risky. And so I always set the expectation with consultants like yourself or candidates, that doesn't work for us. We need you to work and grow the business for 3 to 6 months, and then you can hire a manager. But you need to learn this from the ground up. And so, that, and then, it's just kind of different personality traits of, oh, this guy's definitely not going to follow the right direction. I told people sometimes, hey, like, this isn't the right fit for you. I promise you, but let me put you back in touch with your consultant, because they're going to find the right fit for you, but we're not it.
Yes.
We're not it, and I think I treated this brand like it's been my own for the last, 2.5 years.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff. I've had people on a regular basis say, hey, can you send me your list of your favorite brands that are the most profitable? And I said, wait a second. Are you going to run it full time? Are you going to be a semi-absentee owner and hire a manager? And, so it's not different strokes for different folks. You want to own a great Clips hair salon. You don't know how to cut. You don't need to know how to cut hair, but you have to dedicate your full time to operate that thing, believe it or not. So every brand is different. So Aaron, final thoughts. You've given us a lot of great info. Tell us what's to come for you. What's coming soon, and then give me your final thoughts and words of wisdom for those listening.
Sure. Yeah. So since I've been in franchising, I've worked on brands that have been around a long time, and I've worked on brands that are, only a few years old. And what I've learned over the last, few years that I've been in this, since I started, I've learned how to run a successful franchise. I've learned the core tenets of franchising, support, marketing, everything that goes into running a franchise system. And so I've been working on building basically the back-end infrastructure to plug any business into. So what I'm in the process of doing is working with an existing business that is a successful business that wants to franchise. But I am going to handle the franchising part. So I have a team of people who will be supporting and coaching franchisees and launching them. And then I'll work with folks like yourself and FranServe to make sure that we find qualified candidates. And we're going to basically build a franchise system over the course of the next 5-6 years to about 250 to 275 territories, and become the biggest organization in that specific vertical industry that we're going into. And more to come on that in the next couple months. There will be news announced, but that is that's what I'm doing. Of course, here you will announce it. I will come back on here, Lance, and I will break the news here. Breaking read all news. About it. We can do it live. All right. So final thoughts for people listening that are interested in business opportunities. Is a franchise right for me? Yep. What would you say to them? I would say franchising is probably one of the safest investments that you can put something into. Real estate is affected by interest rates and this and that, or inflation or whatever, and the stock market goes up and down, and there's only so much you can count on over a period of time. If you put your full effort into a franchise business and you follow the instructions of the franchisor and you trust the process, what happens when inflation goes high? You raise prices. What happens when a recession happens? You have a recession-resistant model that, is gonna attest in time over those 2 periods of time. So franchising in general should not be this scary, oh God, the big bad franchisor is coming in to screw me. It's like, no, we're developing a partnership. We can't do this without the franchisee. This is as important to me as a franchisor as it is to the franchisee, and sometimes probably even more important, because like with the brand I'm going to build, we're going to be starting essentially from scratch. So those first 5, 10, 15 franchisees, like they're going to have to be perfect, right? So like, I mean, not perfect. No one's perfect, but you know what I mean? Like,
I know.
And so franchising is not this scary, you got to own a McDonald's to be successful. It's like, no, there are some really, dirty businesses that you can make, good money on if you do your research and you make sure that the franchisor is going to support you. And people like you and FranServe and all of the different folks who really care about helping, helping business owners find opportunities is the best place to start, because otherwise you go online, you type in franchises under 200 grand, you're going to get blasted by a bunch of opportunities that you have zero clue which one's good. Whereas like Lance, how long you been doing this? 19 years or something like that?
Well, almost. Yeah.
Like 18, 19 years. Yeah. Like, why wouldn't you use someone like you? It makes no sense. Like, go buy a house on your own, save some money there. But like, that doesn't make any sense. You don't know how to negotiate contracts. You don't know what the best deals are. And so if you're interested in franchising, you should definitely at least do your research and consider it. And working with a franchise consultant is the best place to start to find a good franchisor who's going to support you and make sure that you're as successful as you can be.
I love it. Great place to leave it. And thank you, Mr. Aaron Harper. Thank you for being here, my friend.
Thank you, Lance. It's been a great pleasure. I've really enjoyed it.
Pleasure's all mine. Thank you very much for listening today. Please like, follow, and subscribe. This is Lance Graulich. Until next time.